With the advent of mankind, violence has existed as far back as we know it, but as man became more civilized, ethics and morals were added into the types of fighting that they would do with wisdom and growth in a person. Even in today's society, we have to understand there are moral implications when we're studying the martial arts. Stay tuned, we'll talk about it. Welcome to Shihan's Dojo. I'm Shihan Marty Husband, and I'm here today to help you build your martial arts skill, or if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about the martial arts, tell you a little bit more about it. So if you're here for the first time, jab that subscribe button and punch the bell so we can notify you when we have a new video coming out. The question for today, are there really any ethics or morals in martial arts today? Leave your ideas and comments down in the bottom down there so we can maybe get a discussion going here. Many of the classical styles of the martial arts over the years have had their own traditions, knowledge, and experience. Each of this is supposedly been passed down from generation to generation. Training in these types of martial arts have led to the ideas of promoting one's health and improving one's temperament, helping them within the struggles of nature and in the course of their own life. But what comes into play today, are the ethics as real today as they were hundreds of years ago? In Chinese martial arts, the thought of self-defense and mental training are only part of what is taught. In teaching their martial arts, they use something called wudai, which basically means martial morality. Certain philosophies of Chinese martial arts has basically been prevalent for centuries, especially in understanding how to have a stable relationship man to man or woman to woman. There's an old saying in the martial arts that states that one must learn civility before he starts to learn the art, and one must know ethics before his skill. Civility should be attained in that we have politeness, respect, courtesy, and consideration for others. Ethics, on the other hand, is basically a set of acceptable behaviors to guide the student with proper morals and the philosophies to go for family, culture, society, and themselves. Most Asian cultures tend to have a sense of community. This sense is basically driven by the fact that they take care of each other. Because they rely on each other, they show respect for each other in their daily jobs in helping the community and make it grow stronger. They make sure in their own hearts that they follow these ethic principles and the civility of the community to hold deep respect for all those that live in their community. In the classical methods of Chinese martial arts and the traditional karate methods that are taught in Okinawa, they were always taught not to use their skills unless absolutely necessary. You can see this in many of the classical Chinese writings or even the precepts that was written by Anku Otosu. In these, they always talk about walking away from a fight if possible, or if one has to fight, fight for your community, your family, your masters, your teachers, those that were around you, but never for yourself. Now, that's not to say there weren't people out there trying to brag and grow on their martial arts, saying that they're the best and we're going to show you who's the best, and for whatever reason have the narcissistic tendencies to try to prove something to themselves that they are better than anybody else. The Japanese did treat the martial arts a little different in that they made sure that they were prepared for war, self-defense, fights, whatever, and of course there was much cruelty that sometimes happened throughout the samurai periods. Things changed once Gichin Funakoshi came to Japan to teach karate. Even his ideals varied between the two teachers he had, from Anku Otosu and Yatsumi Azato. Yatsumi Azato was also very famous, but he was a famous warrior and horseman. Very peaceful man, nice, but he was a warrior. As a supposition on my part, I would think that with Funakoshi's family background, it probably inspired him a little bit more to understand what competition was. In some ways, it helped Funakoshi to become more adapted to the mainland Japanese ideas of reasons for fighting and getting people prepared in case they ever had to fight or go to war. I would suggest sometimes, and I might share it someday with you guys, Itosu's precepts and Funakoshi's precepts were close, but there were some minor changes in understanding and ideologies that they'd passed on. But the one thing you've got to understand, people like Jiro Kano, who came from a jiu-jitsu background which was for self-defense and created a sport and a peaceful sport, and Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido, doing the same thing. Both of these guys came from warrior-style backgrounds and started a big promotion of peaceful practice and competition. In Aikido, it was thought wrong if you had to fight, yet people trained to make sure that they were ready in case they ever had to. Judo, as we know, became a real popular sport, and basically means the gentle way. Even the precepts that these four, Itosu, Funakoshi, Kano, and Ueshiba, began to really transform the Chinese ideals of community, personage, as well as perfection of oneself. Their religions did have a play in the way they thought or dealt with their lives. However, martial arts itself, unlike the myths that come out, was not done or created just by religious people. Many people think that the ethics were created by religious Shaolin monks or Buddhist monks that have passed these ideas and traditions down. But in reading Itosu's precepts, he made it perfectly clear that the ethics and morals had nothing to do with religious backgrounds, but the right thing for people to do. It's a common fallacy today that they think that the ethics and morality came from these religious persuasions, and it's not true. It just came from, hopefully, the civility of mankind, but there's nobody saying this is when it happened. And in all four of these basic styles, they always tried to understand the levels of self-defense and how to use them. Not everything was a strict kill because something happened. Fighting itself was only paramount according to the attacks that were being given to him at that time. Many other things that were taught was the respect for masters, traditions, and other styles. I mean, according to Funakoshi's book, if I remember right, Itosu was basically the one who told him to work with Ozato and a couple of other instructors in which Funakoshi built his Shotokan around. Many of these masters specialized in different areas of the martial arts, and one could learn a lot from them, and not everybody claimed to know everything about the martial arts, but were willing to teach their secrets or how to fight the way they understood it. Other than political problems for fighting or war or things like that, masters would usually pass down the important stuff to their senior students. In many instances, they were lost over the years for different reasons, but one thing that usually always remained were the morals and ethics in that system. Even Yip Man out of China had a code of conduct that his students had to follow in order for him to continue teaching them and keeping them in his organization. I sometimes wonder about the eclectic styles out there. They basically draw their ideas from street fighting, different styles of martial arts, and sometimes bash what they really don't understand. The one thing I have to wonder about is the ethics and morals that are passed on through these eclectic styles. In today's society, we have kind of a different way of ethics and morality. It's a sad thing because I've seen it so many times out there with the lack of respect for other martial arts styles. Everybody has a claim that this is better than this and that's better than that, and are not afraid of telling people that they're some sort of McDojo, as they call it. Not all of those styles out there are McDojos, and it's just a matter of understanding and respecting what they know. I think in today's society, if ethics and morality were studied a little more, even outside of the traditional styles, you would see a much better martial arts built, other than the egos that are built up off these martial artists who think that their ideals are the best. In many ways, martial arts still serves an overall importance, and that is helping people to understand their self-defense and the right times that they need to use it. As for competition and that, there are many different types of skills in that are not related to self-defense. However, the same thing can be said with self-defense, that they tend to not always understand what they can learn from the other systems out there. I think in respecting other styles or other martial artists that are training, one can begin to really grow in their own martial arts and take it to a point where they make that art their own. I think Bruce Lee was completely correct in talking about the art itself, making that art your own, and I also believe that every fighting style that you learn helps build a fingerprint of what your style of fighting is. Now, mind you, I do think there are some McDojos, as you call it, out there, but in some cases I think they're literally blasted because of the commercialism that I see out there. It's one thing I preach against. When people start talking to me today about MMA and how it's the best way to learn to fight self-defense, I disagree with them because I consider them a gladiatorial art just like it was in Rome. The only difference is these men become slaves to themselves trying to prove something, where in Rome these were slaves actually fighting for their lives. I think in many ways these martial arts who combine the things that they've studied are excellent fighters. However, the hero worship is really bad. I think that people have to realize that they're just people, because sometimes their moral ethics are not as heroic as commercialism makes them out to be. I'm not saying that for all of them, but many of them still have things that I would concern me with their moral structure. I've always respected everyone in the communities and other martial artists, even if I didn't agree with some things that they were doing. It wasn't my place. If I understood exactly what they were doing, maybe I could agree with them. But everyone has a limited prejudice or ideas that they cannot see past. I think on the internet today there's a fascination with people not understanding the true nature of what the internet is. There's a lot of false material out there, and I love it when somebody says, well, you just need to Google it. Well, Google isn't always correct, and neither is Wikipedia, considering that it's just normal people writing information in there. There's many things you cannot learn unless you train completely, ethically, morally, and how to improve yourself. I'm sure there are many people out there who are upset by this and saying, oh, I have moral ethics, and you don't know what you're talking about. Well, if you come back with that, think about what you just said. Or think about what I was trying to tell you. I'm often reminded by the fact, when I watched The Karate Kid, I was really upset to see who the real bad guy was there at the beginning. It was Ralph Macchio's character that actually was the bad guy, because he kept egging things on. Later on, when he got beat up by the group of boys after he pulled the prank on the leader, he then ran away and had all of them to fight, which then, of course, as we know the story, he gets saved, and then you find out that these guys' teacher is the real bad guy, which he was, and was not a good instructor to teach these guys. But if you find in the end of the original series, when that kid gives Daniel the trophy, his moral ethics he had built inside of him. I think he understood, and it was proved to him, the importance of having some type of morals. I agree with the Chinese philosophy, though, that you have to learn to heal first before you can learn to hurt someone in self-defense. I think a person has to understand the levels of force in being able to decide how to handle a self-defense situation, whether just to control it or to simply destroy the opponent that is trying to take them out. Much of the integrity of the martial arts has been lost today by the simple fact of people trying to sit there and say, well, this person is more than this person, or their ideals are the only ones that are correct. I think many of the traditional arts today still preach and practice some of these ethics and morals and stick to them pretty regularly, because they understand true community. Now, there are some out there who are just doing it for the money. They could care less. But martial arts is for the community and its prosperity, as well as keeping family and people safe. I think that this generation in somewhat does not understand courtesy, respect, loyalty, generosity, and a dedication to really training in the martial arts because they want the simple, quick, fast thing. They do not understand the rewards of training properly and with a focus and a discipline. I think training with the martial arts without ethics or moral principles or the philosophies of the martial arts is a waste of time and energy. Without them, you cannot really be called a martial artist, just a fighter. Character building is the most important thing of any martial arts that a person can do. And if it builds up your ego, that's bad. If it builds up your self-confidence, that's the thing you're shooting for. If it makes you feel good about who you are and what you're doing, that's good. If it helps you to remain healthy throughout your life, that's even better. There must be some sort of built-in civility for any type of training fighting system to help build the community of mankind. I know this is not a normal way of presenting material today, but I want you to understand how important morals and ethics are to me. And if you're a teacher or training someone in a martial arts style, maybe take a moment to examine your ethics and morals that you are teaching to your students or those who are training with you, albeit for self-defense or sport. These athletes and students are the future of our world, and we would be remiss in not letting them understand the civility and nature of being a community. I hope you've liked this video, and if you have, press like down there and share it with your friends so we can make Shihan's Dojo grow. And if you have any questions, observations, or want to answer the question, put it down there in the comments so we can have a discussion started. And we hope to see you again here on Shihan's Dojo.